Welcome back to Gaming TI. We got another episode for you guys today. I'm Imani.
And I'm Tristan, and today we're going to be talking about some the Twitch ban wave and some interesting comments made by a creative developer on Stadia, and yes, some interesting comments have been making its wrongs around the internet and Reddit and Twitch and the entire gaming internet basically.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you play games, if you watch streams,
yeah, you
you
probably
probably heard
already know
about
what we're
this.
talking about,
Yeah.
and the Tesla full self driving beta was released
Yep.
earlier this week. Was it?
Yep. On Wednesday we had FSD finally released to a very select few people. I wouldn't say select few, but a small amount of people who already purchased the package. And we're finally starting to get videos of that floating around the internet. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, exciting times indeed. Like real. I think we could get started with the comments that the creative director made. What was his name?
All right.
Could you
So
remind me?
his name is Alex Hutchinson, and he
Alex
is the
Hutchinson.
creative director at wait, what?
I think it's Stadia Canada or something like that.
Yeah, at Montreal Studio.
Yeah,
Like
Montreal. Yeah.
they took the name Google, like he had Google Stadia in his bio when I first read the tweet.
Oh,
Not anymore.
I guess Google really distanced themselves from themselves from
Yeah,
him.
because right now it says creative director at SGNE Montreal Studio.
All
So
right. So like we should give some backstory on the comments first. So a couple months ago, we did an episode on copyright, and
mhm.
that was brought on by the fact that Twitch started claiming a bunch of content creators VODs because of the music in
Or
those
DMCA rather. Twitch is just a
the
medium. Yeah.
there were DMCA claims on the VODs and
Mhm.
clips from content creators, something that wasn't really enforced by Twitch before, and they started enforcing it. And that was just because of the music that was in those clips, right?
Yep.
So that's still going on, and recently there's been another wave of bans that
Yep.
are well, of claims, I should say, around the in on Twitch. So there's a bunch of content creators that's been talking about the ban wave. A lot of them are scared about, like just how they're gonna continue streaming, right? Because like music is not like a huge part of streaming, but like people like to have music in their streams, right?
Yeah, of course.
So in response to this, the creative director, Mr. Hutchinson,
Yeah,
this
Mr. Hutchinson.
decided that he's he's gonna tweet out something, and he says that the content creators, I'm paraphrasing here, he says that the content creators or the streamers that are worried about uh getting about claims on their for music should be worried about uh claims on the video games that they're playing.
Yep. So I'll read out the tweet verbatim. Streamers worried about getting their content pulled because they used music they didn't pay for should be more worried by the fact that they're streaming games they didn't pay for as well. It's all gone as soon as publishers decide to enforce it. And then he followed up that tweet saying the real truth is the streamers should be paying the developers and publishers of the games they stream. They should be buying a license like any real business and paying for the content they use.
Okay, so my first thing with that is they should be they should be buying a license like any real business. First of all, that's not how all businesses work. Like a lot of businesses, you buy a product, especially when you pay for a product to start your business. Let's say you buy a computer for your cash register. There's the checkout, right? you don't need to pay that computer company licensing fee to
To use
use the
the computer.
cashiers. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because you're using the computer in a business and you're making money using that computer. And it's the same thing, like it's the same thing with streaming, honestly. Like you buy your parts, or you buy your pre-built computer, and you don't need to then pay Nvidia because you're using their graphics card to stream. You
Yeah.
already paid for the product.
Hmm.
I think that's like where a lot of the backlash came, is because, especially with games that aren't free to play, I already paid for this game, and so it's mine, and I could use it however I want to. I think that's where a lot of the backlash came from.
Yeah. I mean, I like so initially I thought it was a stupid take. I still think it's a stupid take.
It's a stupid take.
Uh,
It is.
I just don't understand. And I mean, obviously he's on the business side of video games, right? He's on the developing side. So he's very much on the side that is supposed to be making a living and making money off of it. And I could understand where he's coming from to some extent, but at the same time, I think that it's such a bad take because streamers help promote games.
Exactly.
Streamers, we've spoken about this multiple times on many other past episodes, where streamers can make or break a game in a lot of cases.
Exactly.
And even just recently, we were speaking about Among Us. Among Us, one, COVID is one big reason why Among Us came back, but at the same time, it's because it got so much life from the streaming community, from the content creating community. And the thing is, where does this stop, right? Because I don't think it's going to just stop at streamers, because this means that they're going to go after content creators for the games as well. Like, it only makes sense, right?
Yeah, and it's basically just a. It's honestly, beside the fact of being a dumb thing to say, is basically be a very greedy way of thinking, in the sense that
Agreed.
the reason he said that is because he's a developer and he wants more money. To me, that was the malice behind the statement.
It
Uh,
definitely feels like that.
but in the reality is, these content creators are promoting your game at no charge. They're
Mhm.
doing it for free. There are a lot of games that I would not have even known about that I've purchased because I saw a streamer purchasing it. Among Us, great example. I bought that
Sure.
because there were streamers purchasing one of my favorite games. Uh, Overwatch. Again, I had no idea about Overwatch until I saw a streamer playing it. That's
Right.
like, and when I downloaded Overwatch, I paid full price for the game. No one, like, I actually bought it twice actually. Once
Yeah. Yeah, you have two
because I
accounts.
have two accounts. But the streamer didn't get a portion of that sale,
No?
and it was definitely them. Why the reason I bought the game was definitely because of that streamer. So are the
Right.
developers now going to pay streamers for their advertising? It's like it gets muddy, right?
It gets very muddy very quickly.
I think streaming is a situation where, like you kind of have to quote Thanos here. Like, it's balanced. It's perfectly balanced, as all things should
Perfectly
be.
balanced as all things should be, yes.
Like, there's a give and take that, sure, it may not be even. Like, I know I just said it was balanced. It may not be even, but it doesn't have to
Yeah,
be.
right.
It's like, it's the streamers and the developers, they have an understanding. The developers know that the streamers are big parts, or can be at least a big part of why their game is successful, or why their game has longevity, as a matter
Mhm.
of fact, because there are a lot of old games that are still being streamed, and that's partly the reason that's why they keep bringing back players, because people watch the streamer and they want to play the game.
there's a community there, right? Like, and I
Exactly.
think that's something that you can't really put monetary value on. The fact that there is a community behind the game. There's a lot of people who play certain games because of the community around it. I play Beat Saber because of the community around Beat Saber. Not just the modding and all of that, but especially since multiplayer has become a thing. I've actually made a couple of friends in VR because of Beat Saber, and the community is what keeps me going back and wanting to play more multiplayer and hopefully getting fit. But I think that there's things here that like you can't put a dollar sign on. And one reason why I know that developers know that streamers cause games to blow up is because how many times do you see a a game sponsored stream? When
Mm.
Apex first came out, I remember Daquan was streaming it. I don't know where Daquan is. I hope he's doing all right out there. But he was streaming it, and I watched his stream. And honestly, I watched it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is a battle royale with ultimates. What the hell is this?" Like, and this was back when I was playing. I think I was playing Fortnite at the time, and I was just like, "What the hell is this? Why would anybody play this?" And then Apex became one of my main games, and every time a new game comes out, like most recently, I think Rogue Company was one of the things that they were like, oh, sponsored stream for Rogue Company, go check out the game. And this wouldn't happen if people wouldn't be spending precious ad money, because a lot of the times the way advertisements worked for most of history so far has been you're giving it not to individuals, but you're giving it to large companies, or you're putting it in very public places, and that's how you advertise the product. Now what's happening is they know that influencers and certain people in certain communities have such influence that they say, hey, we could approach these individuals, not this company that owns a billboard in Times Square or anywhere. We can approach these individuals who have a reach to tens of thousands of people to then get them to promote the game for us.
Hmm.
So it's just such a it's such a bad take. Like, and honestly, he hasn't tweeted since October 22nd, which is the day that he made the tweets. Um, and I actually want to read through some of the responses that some people have left. And you know like for example, one guy, and a lot of these people are people in the gaming community. They're people with the official Twitter verified mark, right? So you can tell that this riled up a lot of people. One person went and said, this is an almost unbelievably terrible take. There's absolutely no support for it in any formal or even coherent economic reasoning, and no empirical support beyond edge cases like previous gen Nintendo. Um, and like there's just so many responses here where one person is like, admit it, you're bored, and you're just after some drama right now. And
And that's what it felt like to
one
me. It honestly felt like when I saw it, I thought, yeah, I hope that this person really doesn't think like this, because this is just a dumb way of thinking.
See,
It
I mean, it's start like, I guess there's the whole advocating, it's like, devil's advocate, right? And it's like, no, like, and the one reason why I think that even he didn't sit and process, like you said earlier before we started streaming, like he didn't sit with this thought long enough. you know,
Yeah,
because
I that's all. That's what, because like his follow up tweets, like you can read out some of his follow up
yeah,
tweets.
I'll read. So like this like he followed up afterwards saying, amazing to me that people are upset at someone saying that the creators of content should be allowed to make some of the money from other people using their content for profit. Which somebody replied, it's a good idea on the surface, but it's more complicated than that. Anecdotal, but some people don't make a single dollar off of streaming.
Most
They
people,
just do it for fun. Most
most
people.
people,
We're talking about 90% of people who stream on Twitch do not
probably
make
even
money.
more than that, actually.
Yeah. It's a very, very high amount. Like, a lot of people just stream for fun. And he continues saying, where are we creating the line for that? Where are we drawing the line for that? What about free games? What about games that are popular because of streaming? And Alex Hutchinson went and replied, that's why it would be better to do it as a revenue share, not an upfront fee. Now, like that's like
It's,
that even that right there seems to be conflicting with his original statement because he said a licensing fee, right?
yeah, that's what
And
he said.
oftentimes licensing fees are something that you pay up front. Like I pay a licensing fee to use Adobe products. And like
It's either
that's
you pay up
just
front or it's like subscription based.
exactly.
But to me, it just felt like, and then like he followed up. I don't know if it was after or before that tweet. Like kind of jokingly saying that he's gonna stream some Fall Guys. Who said,
Yeah, he
right?
said
To me, it just felt like this was a thought that came to him, and he didn't sit with it long enough, and he had his phone in his hand, so he just tweeted it out, forgetting that he has this following.
probably
And
forgot that he even tweeted it. And then he woke up to like this shitstorm, right?
yeah, and then it's. I think he probably, if he sat with this a bit, I think he knew. I think he would have known that. Yeah, this isn't. I can see that there's a quick pro with the developers and the streamers. Maybe if he sat with it for like a few more minutes, he would have. But instead of like facing the backlash and saying, you know what, I think I was wrong, he decided to double down and
Double down.
go more aggressive.
I I just don't see how at any point, that this could be a good take. And admittedly, he did, say, hey, feel free to disagree with me, but I'd like I think that even developers saw this tweet and were probably like, bro, don't don't do this. Don't
Yeah,
do this.
there's probably a lot of developers that don't want anything to do with this because,
Yeah,
like, they honestly the share between how much money they make from the streamers advertising their game freely is probably so significant that they don't care about that licensing fee. They
yeah,
don't care about that streaming is technically copyright infringement. They don't care because they get so much ad money. Well,
exactly. It's
so much new
literally
sales actually.
and
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's free advertising. That's what it is. It is free advertising.
Yeah.
There is
Streaming.
almost no disadvantage to having somebody play your game that you've already produced. So you've already come up with the money to create this game. You've already created the game. Now somebody's playing it and freely advertising it for you.
The
I do not see how this can be a negative.
the only disadvantage it has, which admittedly this is something that I am on the fence about as well. And I don't know how to go about this. And unlike Mr. Hutchinson, I would not be making any suggestions or any bold claims because this is a complicated situation.
Of
But
course.
in instances where it's a story-driven single-player game, and
Ah,
where if someone streams that and I watch the stream, I'm probably not as
you're less inclined.
I'm not as inclined to buy the game just because I've seen it. I've seen the spoilers. I know what's gonna happen. Like it's kind of like pirates in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like in those situations, I don't even know how you'd go about that. I don't know. Like if the streamer is engaging with his chat while playing the game, is it really is
Are you
it
modifying the content
are you
enough
modifying
for it to
to be fair use, right?
yeah.
So yeah, that one is tricky, and I could definitely see a developer in those cases feeling like they've been cheated, but
Mhm.
then it's like if you claim something like if you claim a single player game, then where does it go? It's a slippery slope, right?
It's a really slippery slope.
So I don't know, like I don't know how to deal with it, and I wouldn't even suggest a licensing fee for those games just because, like I just said, it's a slippery slope. Maybe you get licensing fee for all games, and yeah, I think you just leave it as it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a really tricky thing because story-driven games are very much different. The content is the story.
Yeah,
Whereas, multiplayer games, Overwatch, Apex, uh The content is the gameplay,
Yeah,
right?
each game is different, and in definitely in those games, you can argue that it's fair use simply because the streamer is playing the game for. Well, the streamers is not going to play the game like anybody else plays the game, right?
There's not one way to play the game. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's in those cases you could argue fair use, and but definitely for the story driven
Yeah.
games, especially like the YouTube uploads of story driven games.
Yeah.
There's like streamers or content creators that stream an entire game, don't say a single word through the entire gameplay, and then upload the whole like 5 or 6 hour video to YouTube with a bunch of
Yep.
ads in between.
Yep. There's actually, the funny thing is, there was a time where that was what I looked for. I looked for no commentary gameplay of certain games because it's like I wanted to watch it like a movie. I wanted it to. There are certain games
And then would
that
you
I've
buy that game after you
nope.
watch it? See, that's
I
the thing. That's
literally went to YouTube to watch the game and not have to buy it. I
yes.
think I did that with
So that's pirating.
Heavy Rain. Yeah.
So that's pirating, like straight up. So like, yeah, I think the developers deserve something for that. I don't think that I feel like the developers got cheated in that instance, but that's
Yeah,
not
for
the.
sure.
It's definitely not the case for all streamers or all content creators. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
and like you said, it's a slippery slope. I mean, and it has there's a lot of legal implications that can come about this situation depending on, if developers, or publishers did choose to go and enforce this. I feel like this can easily this like if companies all of a sudden started wanting to enforce this, that could easily kill streaming. Um,
Which is
the only
not
the only
something they
type
would want. Which is
exactly.
definitely not something that the developers would want because, as we've mentioned multiple times, it's free advertising.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, interesting take on Alex Hutchinson's part. Go check out his Twitter, bang bang click. Go see the tweets for yourself. Leave him a nice
Don't,
little comment.
don't. I'm not sending anyone there to berate the man because he made
No.
a bad tweet. Don't like,
No, it's not. Don't go and berate. But if you have an argument, like do
yeah,
voice your valid argument, not in a negative way. Like don't send hate to the dude.
yeah,
But like just like we are here, have a discussion about it. He's replied to some tweets, and just
yeah. Just
this is
like,
this is a discussion.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, yeah. Uh,
So
so I think we're done with that. I think we can move on to some better
so
news.
to some more legal and ethical issues.
Like I thought we were
um
going lighter, but technically, yeah, we kind of go into more legal territory. Yeah.
More legal territory and even ethical to some extent. So Tesla dropped full self-driving beta. Again, like I said earlier, to a select amount of people out there. And it's yeah, so now we're finally in that we're getting to that future
Is it
where your car could drive yourself.
is it with
Your
all
car
Teslas or just a select few Teslas?
So here's the thing. Tesla puts all of the hardware necessary for full self-driving into all of their cars.
Okay.
Every single car that Tesla has made, I think since 2017, I believe, has the hardware for full self-driving. So Model 3, Model X, Model S, Model Y. Doesn't matter what the Tesla is, it can do it. And that's a really interesting thing on their part because compared to like other manufacturers, where you have different tiers of hardware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you literally might have hardware in one car that's not in another car. All Teslas have the same hardware,
It's just software restricted.
software restricted.
Okay.
Exactly. So, for example, if you wanted heated seats, you could go and pay for that and not have to go and pay for access to that functionality, and afterwards, you don't have to go and take your car in. You don't have to go and buy a new car. You can do that. So the full self driving software package. Actually, it started off, I think, at $5,000, and then it's slowly been creeping its way up as Tesla said they would do, and on Monday it actually changes to $10,000. It
What
was eight. Hmm?
one question though.
So
If the car comes with all the hardware, then why is it more expensive? Like the higher end versions. If the lowest end
oh,
version has all the hardware, then why is the highest end model more expensive?
there are certain cars. When I say the hardware, I don't necessarily mean all of the hardware. So like you have the performance editions, for example, that have two motors, or the plaid Model S, which has three motors. So like in terms of things like that, like motors and battery pack size, those are the things that are oftentimes varied in terms of like the performance models, the long range models, and so on.
Okay, gotcha.
But generally speaking, for like in cabin features, and most of those kind of things, like everything is there. You can just pay to access it.
All right, cool.
But for performance and battery, those things are definitely, they definitely vary. But so yeah, full self driving is out there in the wild, and we actually we finally have some videos of people doing it. So I'll definitely leave the link to those in the description. And for those who are on stream, you can see it on stream shortly. And it's we're getting into a very crazy future here, right? It's we're talking about a car that will do everything. You get into it, you put in the address, and then it starts driving. And it makes lane changes, it stops at stop signs, it stops at stoplights, it goes at green light, it stops for pedestrians. And it's still very much in its infancy. It still has a lot of learning to do, but all of the foundation and the groundwork is there to at least get it started and get it starting to learn. So the question is, um, there's definitely some legal and ethical implications here. If the car
Yeah,
hits somebody,
yeah.
if the car scratches another car or gets into a collision, period, who's responsible?
M- uh, Another question is like, if you're in full self-driving mode and you get pulled over, can you get a ticket for that?
Yeah. So to answer some of those basic questions, if you are in the car, if you own the car and you're in the driver's seat, you are still very much responsible for the car when full self driving is active. We are
Oh,
not at the stage
so
of complete.
your hands still need to be on the steering wheel?
Uh, yeah, a little bit. So the car has to sense that there's somebody still there. Like you do, the way it works is you rest you could essentially rest your fingers on like the steering wheel very lightly, and what happens is that the car essentially senses the torque on the steering wheel. So it's like it would put slight pressure in one direction, and if it feels any sort of resistance, then it knows, okay, like there's a hand there holding it, right? And like there was actually a way to trick the system. You could actually put like an orange like in between the top of the steering wheel and like the part that where the horn is, like in between that part there, and it would actually think that somebody's holding the steering wheel. I think they fixed that through a
That's
software update.
well, that's
It's
not
a really
good.
specific thing.
Okay.
But for the moment, the car still needs driver verification. Like, okay, you are still ready in case something happens to take over.
Hmm.
And the reason why we need that is because we did see recently in a case with Uber. Um, Uber had, I wouldn't say recently, this has been a little while now. Um, but Uber had a case where one of their autonomous testing vehicles did go and get into an accident where it did strike and kill a pedestrian. Now, uh, in this case, the person who was held responsible was the person who was driving the vehicle at the time. So the operator was responsible, and um, it's just it's really one of those weird things, right?
Yeah, I guess that you see, in in my opinion, in a case like this, I don't think any one party, at least at the stage where self-driving is now, where
Hmm.
it's basically it's not one entity or the other that's fully driving the car. So in that case, I don't think like in the event that there's an accident, I don't think that one entity should take full responsibility. Because
Why do you say that?
the car, like, yes, the driver still needs to be attentive, but the car is in self-driving mode, right?
Mhm.
So the driver might have to get himself or themselves out of a situation that the self-driving put them in, and maybe the driver is not fast enough
Ah,
or good enough
to
to
do that.
to do that, right?
Mhm.
So in a case like that, it's just me. I don't know how you would do it. I don't know how you would say, like, you would put partial. I don't know how you give a company a partial sentence, like, especially in a case like this where someone died.
Yeah. It's I think I understand what you're saying. I definitely understand what you mean there, and I think in this case, again, like you said, with where self-driving is currently, um, there might need to be responsibility on both parts. But what happens most of the times is these companies, and like Tesla especially, has kind of avoided this by simply saying, "Listen, you are responsible. If you are in the driver's seat and you're using full self-driving, we are not at the point of complete autonomy yet, right?" And the reason why I say yet is because Tesla aims to be to get there soon, and they're definitely aiming to be first. They look like they'll be first, and the reason why that is just because the main reason why they need to release this and get this out to a lot of people who do have the package is because the system needs to be trained and it needs data to do that. Now, one thing about Teslas are they are computers on wheels. Like, they compared to a regular car is a combustion engine that pushes four wheels. A Tesla is literally a computer on wheels. And the other than the aesthetics and the outside body of the car, there's really not much overlap with traditional cars. And all of the data that Teslas receive, and all of the situations that they're put in, all of this data can be used to then train the system. So as more people use the full self-driving feature, you'll basically get this S curve in terms of it's the way it learns. It starts off pretty slow, and then it's gonna like essentially skyrocket as more and more people have it and more people use it, and we'll start to learn all of these niche situations. And then as it gets really advanced, it'll essentially level out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those cases just like where again, right now, it needs to be it's a toddler. It needs to be watched. It needs to be taken care of. It can do things, it can do a lot of things. But it needs to be observed and it needs to be,
I,
very much
I don't think
watched.
that comparison that you made there is very comforting. Like, I don't think a toddler driving is. Maybe
Okay.
call it a teenager. Like,
Okay, teenager is the
just
better
just
is the
got their
better.
license.
Yeah, just got their
Probably still
license.
texting and driving, doing dumb crap
Yeah,
like that.
doing dumb stuff. And, just, like it's very similar in that sense actually. So, and the funny thing is, the reason why we know that there's a lot of legal implications with this is because this has only been released in America. Um, Europe doesn't get this yet. There's a lot of issues in a lot of other countries in the world where it's like a car driving itself presents a lot of issues, you know?
Yeah, and you said like it's only rolled out to like a select few drivers.
Yeah. So Tesla essentially chose some of the safest drivers that they that is in their systems. Again, and the amount of data these cars have in terms of driving safety and stuff is they have a lot of they can tell how fast you accelerate, how often you do accelerations, all of that stuff, right? So And obviously they're not going to like give you any legal summons or anything if you break the speed limit. That's up to you. But they
Mm-hmm.
have the data to say who is a safe and who isn't a safe driver. So most of the people who have it so far are safer drivers. You know, they don't drive at super high speeds, you know, all the time. They're not flying through neighborhoods at high speeds. And you know, it's just we're getting it's a really interesting time we're in, right? You know, it's really crazy some of the footage that we're seeing, you know, seeing the car driving through unmarked roads, you know, in neighborhoods. And it's like, wow, this the system is doing well. So,
Yeah, okay, like something that like to go back to the legal issues, because to me that's the biggest thing with self-driving, right?
mhm,
Is like who is liable, and what are the legal implications, if any? Well,
right,
when it becomes full self-driving, right? Uh, so like to go back to something like well, not to go back, like Tesla has the summoning feature, right?
right,
Where you could, like, if your car is parked somewhere and like you can't get it easily, you can summon it and it will come to you. Like
right.
in a instance like that, there's no driver in the car, so it's,
Yes.
yes, you, like, I know, like, you control it by in the app, pressing the button in the app, but
Mhm.
there is no there's
There's
no
nobody in the car.
there's no one up fully operating the vehicle. You're
No.
literally just pressing a button.
Yes.
So in a case like that, if something were to happen, then it's like, who's to blame? Now, do you blame the driver? Do you blame the company?
So, I definitely think that, when the system reaches maturity, um, the person or the entity to blame would have to be the company because it is their software that is responsible. But then the question is, how do you how do you tell if a system has reached maturity, right? You know,
That's the other thing.
when does that happen? And like it's just really one of those it's such a weird place, you know? And I think it's one of those cases where we're gonna probably figure out a solution maybe not a solution, but we're gonna figure out something, and then that's just how it's gonna be in the future, right? So it's like I don't know, and like it'll just make sense, you know, like in terms of like it makes sense in the sense of like, oh, that's just how it is, you know. Um, while we might not fully agree with it, so I think the thing is, companies would definitely want to kind of like, for example, Tesla would never agree to take full responsibility if they knew that there's a lot of problems that can come up with it, you know?
Mm, okay, okay, but like one of the things where, well, one of the main things actually where where self driving would be uh useful is in taxi services,
Robotaxi, yep.
right?
Mhm.
And like in a lot of the prototypes, like I saw there was one, I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was one in, I believe it was Singapore, where they started rolling
Mhm.
it out, where there isn't any way to control the vehicle,
Oh, yeah, there's no steering wheel or anything,
anything
right?
like that. All right, so let's say we get, not to like, let's say no, in an instance like, let's say one of those vehicles hits someone, like
Right.
the responsibility there has to be with the company, right?
100%. I think yeah, so this is a really gray area, right? Because you do have a case where like you just said, you know, like a robo taxi, that is completely autonomous and it is operated for the sole purpose of chauffeuring people to and from destinations autonomously. That means the company should, or not even should, they have to take full liability, because the passenger, especially if it's a vehicle that is doing the chauffeuring, the passenger might not even have a license. The passenger could be a minor, like, so yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So in a situation like, so you like, I agree with you in a situation like that, the company definitely needs to take responsibility.
Right.
But let's say in a few years, Tesla gets this self-driving tech done,
Mhm.
and you're able to say like confidently that this car can drive itself. All right, you could 100% make that statement, and Tesla says, you know what, you don't even need to to like be aware that much. Just like be vaguely aware of what's going on or something like that. All right.
Yeah, like when you're in a bus, it's like you can't really control something, but you're aware of like the things going on around you sometimes,
Yeah, but you could still control the vehicle
if need be.
if needed. But
Mhm.
in a situation like that, who's responsible if there's an accident?
It has In that case, it would have to be, man, it might be like you said earlier, like, I think it may be partial responsibility here and there, maybe it depends on
How does that
the
work, right?
scale?
And how does that work? That's the whole thing. Like really, how do you give partial responsibility? Does like the company have to pay a fine? Like
Yeah,
I don't.
that would definitely be it.
Yeah, but like something like vehicular manslaughter, that's a tough crime to get off with paying a fine
Paying just
for.
the fine. Yeah. Yeah, and you can't necessarily go and lock up the software developers or the CEO or the president, like, it's, hmm, I think what we would end up having to come down to is, like, we'd have to come down to some sort of legal consensus where we say, okay, either A, the person who is the owner of the car is responsible, or B, the company who created the car is responsible. It's like, because like you said, it's really hard to put a fine or a price on vehicular manslaughter, right?
Yeah. And at the end, you know what I think is gonna come down to is they're gonna have like a terms and services that you have to accept. And
Mm,
the companies are gonna put it on the driver or the operator,
the owner of the
the
vehicle.
owner of the vehicle, basically. So
Yeah.
it's probably gonna it's probably gonna get to a case where, oh, but even oh my god, like I just thought of something. Like, what about when you lend your car to someone? Like, if there's a situation like that where it's the owner of the vehicle that's responsible.
Mm.
Let's say you lend your vehicle. Like, we're talking. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking like in the future. It's full
Yeah, of
self
course.
driving mode. You send your car to someone to pick them up.
Right.
All right, and on the way back, the car gets into an accident. Who's
If
responsible
you
then?
can if you can prove that the person who was in the car had some role in causing the accident, then the person in the car is responsible.
How do you prove that?
Ah, Tesla thought of this. So because of the robo taxi uh feature that ideally once full self-driving is solved, Tesla will awaken. So just to say what the robo taxi feature is essentially once full self-driving is solved, the way Tesla sees it is they can essentially overnight wake up an entire fleet of cars, both owned by companies or for the purpose of like renting, because some people buy Teslas under an LLC and they rent them out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or private cars that are owned by individuals like you and I.
I don't know,
You
a
can
Tesla.
essentially, well, yeah, but like in the future, if you do, right, private
Yeah.
individuals who own these cars can essentially go and just say, you know, all right, car, take me to work. The car takes you to work. And instead of just parking the car and having it sit there in the parking lot all day, it can go out and make money. Um, that's what the robo taxi fleet is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're definitely thinking that, okay, it's going to be super disruptive, blah blah blah. But the whole thing is if you are at work and you're, like your car is doing robo taxi and blah blah blah, there's going to be people coming into your car. It's kind of like, okay, what do you do? Like, if they mess up the car, what happens? So what Tesla did is they installed a camera like over in the middle of the car near the front, that looks in on the passengers. There's actually a little slide to shut it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but basically, once that is open, it can see who's in the car, it can see what they're doing, and it records footage of, if something happens, you can look into the car and be like, okay, this is the passenger that did that, and then you can charge them accordingly. So what this camera does now, it could function as evidence for, it's like, okay, if the person interfered with the steering wheel and an accident happened, now we know that the car wasn't responsible, but the person. Not only that, but there is also data that the car stores in its black box of, manual input from the steering wheel, or it just being the system operating.
Okay. Okay.
So
But I
that's
didn't. I
that's a
didn't. I
pretty
didn't.
simple way.
I didn't know it had
Mhm.
a. I didn't know it have a black box.
Yeah.
That's
So
probably yeah.
the black box is, just basically where the computer and all of that is stored. So all of that information, that I think, and it's right behind the glove compartment, I believe. So it's like, in the case of an accident, they can pull out the computer and they can see, like, okay, this is the data that was going on before the accident and so on.
Okay. Okay.
So
I mean, I for one, excited to see full self driving. Like I have my doubts. Like I'm
yeah, of
not like
course.
diving head first into this. I want to see it work. I definitely want to see it work because like I'm someone that I don't want to drive everywhere. Like
Yeah.
I would love to just be able to be driven, be
There's
chauffeur,
there's
especially
times
in
I'm
traffic.
driving in traffic, man. Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's sometimes when I do want to drive, but there are a lot of times where it's like, sometimes I'm driving and, like, let's say there's a sunset, I want to look over. I don't have to be paying attention on the road. Like,
Like
there's something
yeah, like
interesting going on. I want to look over. I don't want to have to be
exactly.
constantly watching.
You're driving along a coast. I wanna look
Yeah.
at the beach. You know?
Now, like, one interesting thing that I do think is going to happen is this will essentially unlock a new market to some extent when full self-driving is solved, not just by Tesla, but by just cars in general, because I think it's gonna become widespread, right? Like, it's gonna become something eventually that is the norm, I believe. And I think, like, this is gonna open up a new market in the sense of, like, now we have time that we didn't have before to do something we might not have been able to do before. So now you can become productive on your way to work. You could be in the office the moment you leave the door because you could just pull out your laptop, connect it, and you're good to go. So it's like, it becomes a case of, and I think it also changes the way cars can be designed. We're talking about, you don't have to have stationary seats anymore. We can have seats that swivel,
Mm.
turn around, maybe. So I think full self-driving can be a very much a revolutionary point in more ways than just, oh, your car is just driving you.
I have a question though.
Hmm.
Do you think that driving would get illegal? Would eventually become illegal?
So one movie that I always love to look back on, when I think about full self-driving, is iRobot. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a scene in that movie where Will Smith was being driven by his car. He was in the driver's seat and he was going through a tunnel. And then at one point, you know, the robots, pulled up and started attacking him, and he switched the car into manual mode, right? And he ended up, getting into an accident to save his life, of course. And when the police showed up, he is police, but when the rest of the police showed up, they said, we noticed that you were in manual mode. You know that's illegal, right? So it's like
Okay, well, that's
it's
one flaw with the movie. Why is there a manual mode if it's illegal?
well, I think it's because it's like he was on the highway, so it was like, okay, the car's gonna drive itself on the highway,
Oh,
blah
okay.
blah blah blah. But like when you get like into local roads, you can drive yourself.
Okay.
Um, so it's like he hit a button and the steering wheel came out and blah blah blah. But it's like you know in that movie, it was very much touted that like self driving was the safest way to drive, right?
Yeah.
So I think in a case of like certain situations for safety, it might become like, yes, self driving is the only way. For example, with again another one of Elon's company, the Boring Company, with the tunnels that they want to make for this underground high speed network for the cars to travel. Um, only self driving is the only thing you can use in those tunnels because it's so small, it's so narrow. Having a person operate that is very dangerous because if they make a small twitch, we're humans, we might you might flinch and then you fly into the wall, right? So there are certain cases I think where full self driving will be mandatory, and so maybe all highway driving might become extremely high speed driving, but it's only because full self driving is doing it.
Hmm. Okay, but yeah, I can see that happening. I can see that happening. But I can more see full self driving being the only way, the only legal way to drive. Because, like, if this is AI we're talking about and machine learning, if it gets
Right.
good enough, and not, well, it's a matter of when it gets good enough when we're talking about AI,
Yeah.
it's going to be able to drive itself safer than a person in basically all situations. Like, even
Yeah.
on like back roads, dirt roads, or anything like that, it's going to be
Back roads,
safer.
dirt roads, dimly lit roads.
And maybe like way into the future, that people recognize, like, what's the point of? You'll probably get to a stage where most of the vehicular accidents are caused by drivers, by
Right. People
manual
who are actually
people are
manually driving.
actually manually driving. And when
Right.
it gets to that case, they're gonna outlaw driving.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like once autonomous driving definitively is safer, like it is safer already. But when it is definitively safer on a large scale, then I think you are right. Honestly, I think to take it a step further, I think because of the future of self-driving, I think having a car will become a subscription service.
Probably, probably. But and the thing with that is, driving is not always about getting to point A to point B, right? It's about the journey. Like, sometimes
The
it's not.
journey. Yeah.
Sometimes, like, you just want to go on a road trip. It's not about getting there as quickly as possible. Sometimes
Mhm.
you just want to have fun. So maybe we lose something there. I don't know. Maybe we could just be. Maybe we just speculating a bit too much. I just think like it's kind of fun to speculate about this kind of stuff.
No, for sure. I mean,
What the future would be like with this.
that's the thing. Like, this is something that we've never had before in all of human history. In all of human history, I'd say like the closest thing that we could say is like when we were first training horses, like a horse is something that had a mind of its own, right? So it's like until you had it where it's like a horse was properly trained and it would go where you told it to go. Like for most of human history, we've been in control of our movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or we've had to be responsible and aware of our movement. We're now getting to the point where we don't have to be anymore, right? And it brings up a very gray area, for a lot of things. A lot of the times, the journey, again, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, like you're saying. And, now we're kind of taking away the journey, but I think what's replacing that is what you do on the journey, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But okay, let's see. Well, I guess I was about to say something like hypercars and supercars, something would be a thing, more of a thing of the past. But there's you could always like go on a track. Maybe recent tracks become
I
more
think
popular,
so.
more accessible, so you can go race around a track, sang a weave or whatever, drive as
Yeah.
crazy as you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that there will be, or at least maybe designated stretches of country, or designated areas where it's like, okay, manual driving, or manual driving is optional. Maybe it'll become something like the autobahn, where the autobahn is like, all right, in certain areas of this highway, there's no speed limit, right? That is optional to speed. So maybe because like you said, there are a lot of people who own supercars who go on rallies so they can drive their supercars, right? Or
Yeah.
their hypercars.
Or not even supercar owners, just like car modders, people who
Yeah,
have a
people who like cars.
yeah, just people who like us. I think they would reject this so hard. I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
it's
for
gonna
sure.
be. It's not gonna be like a easy transition. So
I mean,
what side would you be on? Like, are you
that's
like
you see, it's interesting, right? Because I'm a car guy, right?
yeah
Like, I do like driving. I actually want a manual car at some point, and it kind of like I'm actually kind of very wary because it's like, electric cars are definitively going to become the future, right? Like I think gas cars, ICE, internal combustion engine cars are going to be outlawed at some point, and England already said 2035, I think, and it's like, so you're telling me I have to go and buy a manual now and experience it like for the time I have now, you know? Because we're getting to that point where it's
you
like,
gotta get that Aventador now, bro? Like,
I gotta go and pay some money real quick. So like it's very hard for me to say which side I'm on because I'm a tech guy, but I like driving cars. I would like to be able to drive my car. So I don't know. I
so
really don't know. Like I'm on right now, I think I'm like I'm definitely for like, yeah, let's go full electric. I want autonomous driving, all of that stuff. But it's like at the same time, it's like for right now, I want to be able to drive until that happens.
yeah, I don't know if I could fully commit. I think I will. I think I have to. Not
I was
like
gonna say we ain't have no choice.
I think I have to fully commit. Not even just because like if it becomes illegal to drive. I have to
Hmm.
commit to like autonomous vehicles just because I think it would be safer. And if you could save thousands of lives or
Thousands, yeah,
like thousands of lives per year, not just like in general, just thousands of lives per year from being lost, you kind of have to get on. Like it's
yeah.
selfish to be
To not.
to not do it.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a whole. I mean, the thing is, oh, what I was gonna say earlier is also like, the transition, for example, like at one point in time, a lot of cars were manual cars. The transition to automatic cars was very, a lot of people automatic car. I want to shift my car myself,
Yeah.
and I think we're gonna go through a similar thing where you're gonna have the people who that's what they grew up with, that's what they knew, and then they get older, and then they start saying like, okay, maybe it's nice not to be able to not to have to shift, in traffic. It's nice to not have to shift, and then the young people is like all they know is automatic cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and I think that's kind of like what's gonna happen. It's gonna be like now we're going to electric, full self-driving cars, and it's gonna be like, I want to drive. And then, there's gonna be like the dying generation that's like, "Huh, I remember when I drove, Then the next generation is like, you drove? What are you talking about? you know?
Like who drives anymore?
Who drives? Like, what are you talking about? Like texting and driving? What is that? So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting future we have coming though,
Yep. Yep. Like I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
for sure.
Like
For
I
sure. I
wanna
mean,
see
this
it.
is out of movies, man. This is straight out of movies.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
like this we're at a good spot to wrap up here.
to
So
wrap it up,
as always, thank you for listening. Hopefully it's been interesting. And just remember, we're not scientists, we're not engineers, just a couple of gamers that talk tech. Alright, peace.
peace.